Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Godspeed TV. I am your host, Riley Roseby, your navigator, your guide in this AI-infused paradigm shift. Today is Wednesday, August 28th, August 27th, getting ahead of ourselves. We got Nvidia earnings after the bell. The stock is down a few percentage points after hours as the conference call is getting started. So as we're recording this, the conference call is good and going. So I'm going to keep this short so I can jump on that. I don't know if I'll see any of y'all over there, but let's get to it. So these were the key highlights from today's earnings report. Revenue growth up 6% quarter over quarter, 56% year over year. The Blackwell data center revenue grew 17%. And the gross margins, take a look at that, folks, 72%. Now, one thing to note here, the no H20 sales to China. There were no H20 chip sales to China-based customers this quarter. This is something to watch in coming quarters and kind of just as a news narrative as a whole. We know President Trump kind of put a squash on Nvidia selling these chips to China. Then they, cut some sort of backhand deal where the United States gets, 10, 15% cut, and they can sell to China. So this is, again, a narrative that we're going to want to watch. Now, one other area we want to watch with NVIDIA, we've talked about the H20 chips, but really what's coming to light is this robot situation. We saw the robots in Beijing. We talked about it the last few weeks. And earlier this week, NVIDIA announced the Blackwell-powered Jetson Thor is now available, accelerating the age of general robotics. This is a trend to watch. We're going to want to see, like we have in quarters past, how these H20 sales have done, if this Jetson Thor device has traction. To be determined. So here's to take a look at the chart. I cut this, I don't know, maybe 15 minutes ago or so. Stock was down 4 points after hours. We're pressed right up against all-time highs. So if we're opening down around 170, 175 tomorrow, I don't think it's time to run for the hills. And this trend, this uptrend is, no longer intact. That said, we're going to want to see the stock trade a few days and see it bounce back before potentially getting long. And I'll tell you what, I am going to be eyeing this 185 level if we break out of that following the consolidation that will ensue from this earnings report. Next up on the docket today, we had some SATCOM consolidation. So EchoStar sold 50 megahertz of spectrum to AT&T for $23 billion in cash, among the largest U.S. telecom deals in a decade. So EchoStar is a satellite communications provider. They entered a definitive agreement with AT&T to sell the company's 3.45 gigahertz and 600 megahertz spectrum licenses, a total of 50 megahertz of nationwide spectrum coverage. AT&T will use this to help bolster its 5G network, and it is subject to regulatory approval. Now, it doesn't seem likely that this deal won't go through, but we always have that caveat. We always have that asterisk in the mix. And the EchoStar is going absolutely berserk. Take a look at that chart, folks. The stock was up 100% since Monday on this deal, and this is the long-term monthly chart. And I know if JC's watching, he's probably going to get mad at me for jumping ahead on the monthly charts. But JC, bear with me. We have to show this epic base, and we only got 2 more days left in the month. So I think it's okay to kind of cut it short just a tad. Up next, we've been talking about autonomous driving. We've been talking about the battle that is going down for robotaxis in Waymo in Austin, and Tesla expanded its Austin geofence once again. If you guys caught me on the morning show, I kind of touched on it a little bit, but let's run through this here. We can see up in the top left, this is June 22nd, when they first launched the program. Very small, very small. We started getting into some odd shaped because Elon is just his own unique individual. And then take a look at what just happened here. August 26th, down in the bottom. What an increase in the geofence area. Now, we haven't seen any news as far as them extending or expanding the robotaxi fleet. So we're still seeing numbers of that 10 to 20 cars in service. So Tesla has proved that it can grow and expand its geofence. Now we're watching to see if it can prove if it can grow and expand its fleet size. This hasn't really been too much of an issue for Waymo, but for Waymo, because they're using LiDAR, expanding that geofence is a little bit more cumbersome. They have to go through and fully map out the intended area before they can let those vehicles go through. Tesla's approach, because they're using vision and sensors, it's much less cumbersome. And their AI is on top of the game. So we shall see. We've talked about Tesla, closed just shy of 350 today. Look at this base though, folks. If we get an absolute ripper into the end of the year in Tesla, Christmas might come early. We shall see. The stock is loading up for a move in one direction or another. We have been absolutely sideways all summer long. Really haven't done much. It's kind of been like watching paint dry. If you've been tuning in for the last few weeks, you might be getting sick of me talking about it all this time when it really hasn't gone much. Lastly, the Starship completes its first full orbital flight and successful ocean splashdown. I don't know if you guys were on the socials yesterday, but this was all over my feed. SpaceX's latest launch. And during this test flight, they deployed 8 mock Starlink satellites, its first payload demonstration. We are just accelerating in this private space race, and it is fascinating to watch. Appears to be a 2-horse race for right now, servicing these launches with Rocket Lab and SpaceX. And what a time to be alive, folks. It's not very often. I can't think of another time in history where we've had this much innovation colliding and just at the confluence where AI is infused in every industry and things are growing exponentially. Here's a beautiful image. It's an absolute work of art. Big shout out to Elon, the team over at SpaceX. One of these days, I'm going to get out to Texas and see it for myself. But in the meantime, we need to understand what the environment we are in. We've talked about this for a little bit. Are we in a rate cutting regime? It seems like everyone is talking about rate cuts, and this was on the cover of the Wall Street Journal over the weekend. Front page, Powell raises hopes of a rate cut. Now, I was doing a little bit of work with the Perplexity comment, kind of asking potentially how many Americans purchased or read this front cover, and it suspects a couple million. I would guess that number is much higher, though, for the sheer fact that if you glance at a newspaper rack, what is the first thing you're going to see? Is this top cover story of Powell raising hopes of a rate cut. So I think for the time being, until otherwise stated, we need to be operating in the mindset that we are in a rate cutting regime. A little bit more risk on. Now, contrary to that, we are in a seasonally weak period. We've been talking about this for some time, and here's a great chart from JC highlighting this, right? Here we are in August. It's pretty much flat, but look what we got coming up next. Coming up next week, starting September, and this is the worst performing month historically in the stock market of all time. Do we expect a crash? Not necessarily, but we should take this into note as far as when we're deploying risk. The odds aren't in their favor as far as seasonality goes. But as JC loves to point out, and I absolutely love this analysis and how he talks about this, it piques his interest when the trend does not align with the seasonality averages. So let's say, for instance, the S&P has an epic September and we rip. That would be a very, very strong sign going into the end of the year. So really, as long as we don't crash in September, I think we can take this with a grain of salt. We adjust our position sizes accordingly, because look at those last 3 months to close out the year. Seasonally, these are some of the hottest months of the year, and we don't want to be too banged up and bruised before we get there. Anyway, folks, I'm going to go ahead and jump on this Nvidia earnings call. I suggest you do the same. Just ask ChatGPT if you don't want to listen in. Ask for the TLDR bullet points. Tell it to be concise. Remember, the prompt is everything. But thank you, folks, for tuning in today. I know it was a quick one. If you wouldn't mind, if you haven't already, please hit that like button. Give Stock Market TV, Stock Market Media, a big subscribe. And if you haven't subscribed already to the Godspeed newsletter, please do so. Check out the new website. We had some fun updating it. It's godspeed.today. That's it. No .com, just godspeed.today. Anyway, folks, let's take a look and see what Nvidia does in the open tomorrow. Don't be afraid to sit on your hands. We'll see you next week.